Greetings, everyone. It is a nice, cool morning here in Southeast Georgia. Hope everyone enjoyed their Labor Day weekend. Hope all y'all were able to get a day off, as so many people fought for, back in the late 1800s and early 1900s here in America, and as so many people fought for May Day before them, right, and after them too. It marks the 80th anniversary of the surrender of Imperial Japan, officially ending World War II. So it's a pretty important day to remember. A war, the millions of lives that were lost, the millions of sacrifices that were made, and the utter destruction that was caused by imperialism and fascism and hate, and how we've grown in some ways, and in others we have fallen back. It's important to take those lessons of the first half of the 20th century and examine our failures during the second half of the 20th century to make this first half of the 21st century as impactful and as bettering, for lack of a better word, for us as a people, whether that's our day-to-day relations with our neighbors and our community, our actions to influence our nation, and how we are, as an entire, or the entirety of humanity. So super important, good day to reflect. But yeah, let's get into the news.
Lawmakers home early would slow down the progress of that petition.
Here he is on NBC's Meet the Press.
House Republicans insist on the release of all credible evidence and information related to Epstein in any way, but we are also insisting upon the protection of innocent victims. And our concern is that the Massie and Khanna discharge petition is reckless in the way that it is drafted and presented. It does not adequately include those protections.
Massie and Khanna's bill does provide protection for victims to avoid the release of their private information.
So starting today, House members can officially sign the petition, which would move the bill to a vote by the full chamber.
Bro, call your reps. Get some pressure on.
Democrats should also approve. They would reach the required 218 signatures, a majority.
For more on the bipartisan bill seeking the complete release of the government's files related to Epstein,
let's do it.
Representative Khanna joins
call your reps. I'm gonna call Buddy Carter today. Tell him I want Hillary Clinton in jail. That might be enough to get him to go.
Your discharge petition is reckless and would harm victims. What do you say to that?
The petition is about restoring trust in government. It protects victims' identity. It's simply calling for the release of all the Epstein files to hold rich and powerful men who abuse underage girls accountable.
It's not just men.
I worked with Leader Jeffries. We're very confident that we will have all 212 Democrats sign the discharge petition, and I'm working closely with Congressman Massie. We have 12 Republicans who have co-sponsored it, and we're very confident that we will get over 6 Republicans to sign it. That will force a full vote in the House.
Hell yeah.
And what happens in the Senate passes? Are you confident that they'll also pass the bill?
I'm never confident that the Senate does anything, but I hope the Senate will vote. But the reality of the situation
that is fair.
Is that if the House passes this, it will be.
I mean, the Senate is inherently undemocratic.
To release the full files.
It's not for the people.
10 victims on Wednesday speaking out for the first time, and that is going to be explosive. The American people are going to hear their stories, which haven't been told before. That combined with the House moving, I think, will force the President's hand and the Attorney General's hand to release the
And what will their main public message be? These victims are holding a press conference with you.
Well, I have spoken to their lawyer. I have not spoken directly to them, but they are going to talk about the abuse that they faced. They're going to talk about how people other than Epstein and Maxwell were involved, and most importantly, they're going to say that for closure, for them, for justice, they want to see the full release of the files. And the reality is, this is not partisan. What has gotten lost in all of this is the story of victims. Their stories have not been told for over a decade. It goes well before Donald Trump. This country has basically discarded them. We haven't heard from them. I'm really proud of them. They're going to be on the steps of the Capitol Wednesday morning.
That's going
to get to hear from them.
Now, you say it's not partisan, and this has angered a lot of the president's base who want the release of these files. But there are also accusations that you as a Democrat are playing politics, seeing this as an opportunity to chip away at the president's credibility.
Yeah.
That's just not true. Look, we have Marjorie Taylor Greene, who may join the press conference and who has co-sponsored
everything's political. Everything's a jab.
Who has co-sponsored the bill. Tim Burchett, who has co-sponsored the bill. Jim Comer, the oversight chair, is saying that we need the full release of the files. So these are some of the leading supporters of MAGA. And I actually view this as a way to bring the country together. Progressives, independents, moderates, and MAGA supporters, all demanding truth and justice. I mean, a nation that cannot hold accountable rich and powerful men who have abused young girls is a nation that has lost its moral and spiritual bearings. We have an opportunity to do something in a nonpartisan way to seek justice for these victims.
You said the Justice Department is stonewalling, and House Oversight Committee is already reviewing some material it's subpoenaed from the DOJ. What would this bill do that the current process isn't doing?
Currently, we have a House Oversight subpoena on the Justice Department. There are 300 gigabits of files. We know this from the FBI's public statements. They have released 1 gigabit. That means they've released less than 1%. Of the less than 1% they have released, 97% of that is already in the public domain. So the bottom line is they've released almost nothing. This would force actual release of the files.
I want to ask, 3 judges refused to unseal testimony in the grand jury investigation. The judges argued that releasing the materials wouldn't contribute to public knowledge. What did you make of that decision, and what's different about what you're trying to do?
Well, I respect the judge's decision, but there are files much more than the grand jury. The grand jury applies to Epstein and Maxwell. What we're much more interested in is the financial transactions that were involved and many of the other rich and powerful men who were involved. And that is what we want to release, the memos, the witness interviews, and we want to protect victims at the same time.
Congressman Khanna of California, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Release the tapes.
Today, Brazil's Supreme Court puts a former president on trial.
Okay,
Jair Bolsonaro is the country's former far-right leader. He's just plotting to stay in power after losing his 2022 re-election campaign. Many Brazilians see this trial as pivotal for their democracy. Bolsonaro has won support from overseas, where President Trump has tried to use U.S. power to stop the case.
NPR's Carrie Khan is covering the story from Rio de Janeiro. Hey there, Carrie.
Good morning.
Okay, amazing story. What exact charges does the former president face?
There are 5 charges, and they include attempting to violently end the democratic rule of law, plotting a coup, and forming part of an armed criminal organization. There are 2 other charges. They're lesser charges, and they're related to damage of property and historical items during the January 8, 2023 riots by Bolsonaro supporters on the Capitol in Brasilia. Prosecutors say they have extensive massive evidence against Bolsonaro, including the discovery of a plot to assassinate President Luis Inácio Lula da Silva and the Supreme Court Justice Alexandre de Moraes. Much of the evidence is in text messages, electronic communications, and cell phone calls between Bolsonaro and the 7 other defendants that are on trial today. Bolsonaro's closest aide took a plea deal for a reduced sentence, and he is the prosecution's key witness.
Really interesting to hear that Bolsonaro's own words would be part of the evidence here. Has Brazil ever had a trial like this?
This is unprecedented. There have been presidents accused of crimes before, but an ex-leader has not been successfully brought to trial for trying to overthrow the government. Brazil's democracy is very young. It emerged from a military dictatorship just 40 years ago. So Bolsonaro's prosecution is really testing the strength of its institution, especially the judiciary and the Supreme Court, which hears criminal cases against politicians. And the other unique thing about this is that there's a lot of intervention on the part of the United States. President Trump has said he is closely watching the case and has called it a witch hunt against Bolsonaro.
Of course he has.
Demanded it be dropped. He's found the lead justice overseeing the case and revoked visas for many of the justices on the Supreme Court.
All this before the Supreme Court has even judged the evidence. What does Bolsonaro say in his defense?
He says he's done nothing wrong. He said if any discussions were had about not giving up power, they were all in search of constitutional ways to stay in the presidency. Bolsonaro has never conceded that he lost the election. His son, Eduardo Bolsonaro, a congressman here, actually moved to the U.S. to lobby the Trump administration for help for his father. And I spoke with him before the trial, and he praised Trump's intervention in the case.
Basically, Trump is restoring the democracy of Brazil.
But there are also many in Brazil that are condemning the U.S. intervention in the case. And they've rallied around President Lula, the current president now, who says Trump is assaulting Brazil's sovereignty.
I guess from what you're telling me, the Brazilians have resisted the U.S. pressure so far. The tariffs, for example, did not cause the Supreme Court justices to suddenly drop this case.
No, not at all.
So what happens now?
They have a job to do.
The trial could last about 2
They have
years.
ethics.
If convicted,
They have morals.
Bolsonaro, who is 70 now, has few appeals ahead of him and could face as much as 40 years in prison. And then they're also concerned that if Bolsonaro is convicted, the U.S. will impose even more sanctions against Brazil.
Interesting, Khanna in Rio de Janeiro. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Well, the tariffs were, not all of them, but a lot of tariffs were determined to be illegal over the last weekend. But of course, they're currently being stayed, unfortunately. They should
This
just
is
cancel
NPR News.
and block entirely. I don't know, I guess the staying is to allow a second round of appeals and the Supreme Court to go through. Well, actually, the Trump administration can continue to collect illegal taxes. Like, that just seems stupid and dumb. And to lengthen the amount of inflationary pressure on the American economy that impacts working people like you and me more than, the CEOs and the rich assholes on Wall Street and people who work strictly in, things like real estate or the private equity, like those people, scum of the earth, the people who don't make wealth, they extract wealth from others, specifically yours and I's pockets, right? Crazy. But no, this is like what is happening in Brazil. I think is really important and is something that we as Americans need to really take a look at and reflect on where we failed, where the Biden administration failed, and where the Lulas of Brazil is succeeding. Bolsonaro is getting his day in court, as he deserves, as everyone deserves a day in court, especially when you try and overthrow a government that democratically elected a new leader and rejected your administration. Like, you deserve your day in court, and in my opinion, you deserve to go to jail, stay there, and be barred from public office for all eternity, right? If you really want to, you can move to a new country and try and convince them there because you failed here. And it's something we really need to reflect on. And, if this ever does happen again, or really when we have our opportunity again as a nation to prosecute the criminals of 2020 and probably the criminals of 2028, don't be surprised if, history rhymes in that weird way in 3 years that we don't see something similar. So, we need strong prosecutors who can build a case at a reasonable pace, right? Who have a reasonable level of independence and are not being hamstrung by the powers that be to have this facade of moral, what's the word I'm looking for? Moral superiority. We need to get away from this Obama era of forgiving liberalism, right? The reason why Bush and Cheney never saw a day in court or a day in jail for the war crimes they committed and they oversaw in Iraq and Afghanistan. The forgiving liberalism of the Biden administration by hamstringing special prosecutors that were put on the case to punish the Trump administration, the 2017 to 2021 Trump administration is absolutely ridiculous. So I look forward to following the Bolsonaro case in Brazil. I wish him the worst because that's what he deserves, and we got a lot to learn from it. And also, once again, call Congressman. I'm going to be calling Buddy Carter's office today. They should be, they're in session right now. So I'm going to call the Washington office. I'm going to call his Georgia office too, and tell him I want Mr. Carter to sign the release petition for the Epstein files that the DOJ is currently holding. And I'm probably going to say that I want Bill Clinton in jail, because I do want Bill Clinton in jail if he was a part of this whole Epstein conspiracy. I really don't care what letter in parentheses is next to your name. If you're a sex criminal, if you're a sex pest, and you harm children like that, I don't care what your political ideology is. I don't care what bills you did and didn't sign into law. You're a piece of shit. You should go to jail. And Bill Clinton isn't even that good of a person politically. He's a neoliberal piece of shit that contributed to the worsening conditions of the United States, not the betterment of the United States. And the dude signed Don't Ask, Don't Tell into law. Like, fuck that guy. Fuck that guy. Some of the best sailors I worked with were gay. Like, fuck Bill Clinton. We'll leave it there for the day. Call our congressman. Call him Buddy Carter today. Release the Epstein files. Y'all have a good one.